Hello, I'm Pastor Shafer, the senior pastor here at Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica, California, and this is Hope Matters. Each week we talk to interesting people from around the community, around the country, and even around the world about the theme of hope, because we believe that hope matters. This week, my guest is a longtime friend, Bishop Roy Riley, the retired bishop of the New Jersey Synod. And while he was bishop in the New Jersey Synod, he served as chair of the ELCA Conference of Bishops, also was on the board of the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services as the chair of that board, a concern and love that we both share. And just told me that more recently he's been serving on the Seafarers International House board of New York City. Roy, there's a lot of directions we can go to kind of introduce you, but I think that our viewers probably have never heard of the Seafarers House. What the heck is that?
Well, this is thank you, Eric. It's so good to see you. You are, I'm out here on coast number 1 and you're out there on coast number 2. We're a long way apart, but as you know, we spent many years together in this neck of the woods. So it's great to see you and to be part of this wonderful idea you've had to do this video ministry. Seafarers is a ministry that began among Scandinavians and so forth a long time ago to provide for people who were seafaring and who would come to New York, a primary port in this country, and would get off ships and need a place to stay, need some help navigating around and so forth. And so there was a ministry to those seafarers. It was kind of their home away from home. And over the years, and particularly over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, really since 9/11, seafaring has changed totally to the point that seafarers from other countries can't even get off of their ships. So Seafarers International House is not so much able to house most of those seafarers, but we do provide chaplains to go on board to meet with the seafarers who've been at sea for 2, 3, 6 months sometimes, and to bring them the things they need, to do shopping for them, and to share the gospel with them as best we can. It's been a wonderful ministry. But then in the last, 5, 6 years or so, the ministry has pivoted, recognizing that there's so many asylum seekers in our communities, and especially in detention in the New York area. And when they are released from detention, they have no place to go. And so our guest house has become a place where asylum seekers can seek refuge and get on their feet, find a job because they've been approved. They've gotten through their immigration hearings and they're ready to take up some kind of status here in the United States. So it's a wonderful ministry. It's really been on the edge the last year because we had to shut down the guest house, just like most hotels in New York City. So it's been a big challenge, but we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, we hope, out here. So we'll see.
We hope so. Thank you. Roy, as you look back on your career, especially your time as bishop and then working with the ELCA, can you think of a couple of things that gave you the most satisfaction in that work?
Well, I think I know the part, the part in connection with the ELCA, that's one piece. The first thing when you mention satisfaction is, and you would not be surprised at this, is I think for every bishop, the moments of ordinations, of new pastors, of bringing new leaders to the church is just a moment of both great thrill and terror, because you're so excited for this new leader in the church, and you also know what's in front of them, and they don't know, how difficult this may be some days and so forth. But that's certainly one. But I think for me and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, it was seeing this fledgling church over its first 20, 25 years really move in a wonderful way to more visible commitment to justice for people living in poverty, for one, and for folks who were on the fringes of society, and taking a really public place in supporting those communities and trying to do something particularly about people living in poverty. That probably brought me more joy in terms of working with my colleagues and churchwide as anything I can think of. But there were a lot of moments of joy, you know.
Yeah, well, we shared a lot of those, with each
We
other,
did.
our
Yeah.
spouses also, so that was great.
Yeah.
Well, Roy, you know that our theme is hope, and you told me as we were getting ready that you've actually done some thinking about that. So, what does bring you hope, especially in this really difficult year?
Well, the first thing I thought of is what do I know and recognize about hope? And one thing is that hope only moves in one direction. It's always going forward. And I think you've heard that on some of the other folks who've come forward. And I think that's so true. It's connected from beginning to end of our lives, but it's always moving forward. And that's really important. The other idea that I had I that actually came out of an article I read by a professor named Charles Pinches, who happens to be the chair of the Department of Theology at the University of Scranton in Pennsylvania, part of your old stomping grounds, and also the hometown of President Joe Biden. He wrote an article for Christian Century some years ago, and a major part of that article was focused on Native American people in this country and what they had gone through in terms of basically losing their life, their community, their way of life over time as first explorers and then settlers, and then the government shifted them and moved them into corners of the country, and how that was debilitating to have some kind of hope for the future. And the kind of the pinnacle moment for that that he described was when the buffalo disappeared, when there were no longer buffalo on the plains, and it was like the end of their life. It's a wonderful, wonderful article about how the Native American community was led by their leaders to find new ways to live and to hope and so forth. But toward the end of that article, he has this wonderful quote, and I wrote it down. It says, acts of hope need not be large or monumental. Most will be small and mundane. Living in hope really means living day to day. Living in hope really means just living day to day. And I've thought about that a lot, and I realized that I have in my own life a kind of a symbol for this, and it's my pill box. Every morning I have this pill box. I'm of that age. And every evening I have another pill box, and my pills are by days and so forth. Back in the old days, when DuPont was a big concern in Delaware, you'll remember they'd say, better living through chemistry. Well, that's the story of my life. It's right there in the box. But when I think about it in the morning, when I open that little compartment and take those 4 pills, I'm not taking them for yesterday. I'm not taking them for today. I'm taking them for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And that's the way that goes. And it's sort of become a symbol of hope, of moving forward, because that's, and just that mundane, simple act of trying to do what the doctors say, take care of yourself so you can move forward and do what you need to do moving forward into the future. That's been a pretty good sign for me. I've kind of enjoyed remembering that each morning.
That's great. That's wonderful, Roy. It's a great example, and you've been through the mill with health concerns, and you're on the other side of those, which is really amazing.
Yep.
Been wonderful. So thank you. Well, I think we've actually hit the topic, haven't we? Really, pretty well today. So and thank you for preparing. I figured you would, but Hope always moving forward. I think that is the case. There's no question. And as you say, a number of our speakers have spoken about that, and some of them have spoken about the difficulty of having hope today also.
Yep.
I mean, we're two old white guys. I think other people have some different views on that.
And, they do. And that's been such a big learning in these last months. And that's why I think it's so wonderful that you're having these conversations in the context of a pandemic and all the rest of the change that we have been going through. The one thing I have learned, Eric, I guess relearned, is how important it is for me personally to hear the proclaimed word of God. As a bishop, you're out there preaching. Synod staff was the same way. When you show up in a congregation, you're the preacher. You seldom get to hear other people preach when you're doing all the preaching. So for me, it was a rare gift to be able to be in my home congregation, to hear the pastor preach, and now in retirement, to hear online on YouTube and sermons from all over. And those sermons just continually call me to understand that our hope is grounded in God's love and faithfulness that is so consistent and so steady, that's where our hope is grounded. So that's been a huge kind of a good news story for me. The other thing is all of the other good news stories that keep appearing in these dark days, on the evening news, on social media, where people who really are sometimes struggling themselves find ways to give hope to other people who come up with the most imaginative, creative ways to do this. It's just remarkable to see that. It occurred to me that when it's the darkest, and it has been pretty dark, when it's the darkest, your eyes have to be the widest open in order to see. And I think that's happened to us in this last year, is against this darkness, we have seen injustice the way we haven't seen it before. And I think begun to take it personally. We've seen economic inequality. So many things have been revealed. And yet in the midst of that, there's the encouragement of all these good news stories and the church's proclamation of God's faithfulness and love that says we need to move forward in hope to address these things, not to just see them, but to do something about them. And I know your congregation has been on the front line of that kind of finding ways to create hope for people who are really up against it. And that's what I'm talking about. But we cannot forget the things we've learned, the things we've seen. We have got to move forward in hope to find ways to address these concerns. And I believe in hope that we can do it.
Thank you. We move forward in hope. Thank you, Roy. And thank you for being with us today. This is Hope Matters. Our guest today has been Bishop Roy Riley, the retired bishop of the New Jersey Synod of the ELCA, and a longtime friend of mine from the time when, before he was a bishop, actually. And we're so glad that you could be with us today, Roy. This is Hope Matters, our weekly production of Mount Olive Lutheran Church that we share with you because we believe that hope matters, and we believe we have a God of hope. Thanks for being with us, Roy, and thank you to our viewers, and we'll have a new program for you next week.